there is a fire drill or something like that. Our muster point is just out on the front on the grass. We have isolated and done everything that we can to make sure that we don't have another fire drill, but you never know, might happen. In that sort of event, yeah, you can just meet out on the actual sort of front grass, so we can tick everyone off and make sure everyone is all safe. During the session, we may have a photographer sort of coming around just to take some shots. If you don't want to give your approval, then just let us know and we'll make sure that you're not in any pictures or bits and things like that. And you're automatically taken out. We Photoshop you in the beginning. Excellent. And also, if you want to just see the great stuff after the presentation, we've got a great little sort of show bag and sort of takeaway gift for you. And after that, I'll throw you over to the Moffat team.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. I should say a big thanks to Cadelink. They're a very, very close partner of Moffat's over here in Western Australia and in Melbourne now as well. They've just opened an office over there where I'm from. I'm a Melbourne boy, so don't hold that against me, please. So very, very close partner of ours, and we highly recommend them for any builds, any equipment sales, any advice really. They're very, very experienced and they're great operators. And like I said, you'll get the best pricing from Moffat Gear through Cadelink. A little bit about me, as Adam said, my name is Perry. I am the product manager nationally here at Moffat for Combi Steamers. Combi Steamers, what I've discovered, I was a chef for 20 years. I worked in some very, very good restaurants here and overseas. I worked in Michelin star places. I worked in, two-hatted restaurants, some very, very good restaurants in Australia. And what I realised after 20 years when I came into this role about 8 or 9 years ago was that the Combi Steamer is the most misunderstood, underutilised piece of equipment in any kitchen still to this day. The reason is how many chefs in this room? Yep, a few chefs. Really? No. Okay. One thing that doesn't happen during our training is whether you go to a TAFE, whether you do apprenticeship in-house, whether you do in-house training, is not much time is spent on Combi Steamers. And when I was a chef back, 10 years ago, I'd go out of the kitchen, so for 20 years before that, they were in big conference centres, hospitals, they were hardly even in restaurants. Now they're everywhere. There's nowhere really we don't see a Combi Steamer, whether it's a small aged care site, a school, a big conference centre, hospitals, you name it, they're everywhere. But in that time, no one really gets trained on what they are. They're a big investment generally. They're incredibly capable in a small footprint, but hardly anyone utilises that equipment fully to what's possible in there. So a little bit apart from my legacy as a brand manager is not only telling you about our brand, but educating people like yourself about what you can do in a Combi Steamer. Who has a Combi Steamer in their premise at the moment? Anyone? Anyone on the fence whether they need one? No? Okay, good. Are you all from I spoke to Blair here today, who is not from the sector, but is an enthusiast and a butcher. Are you all from the hospitality industry of some type here? Anyone who's not? Anyone here from any outlying businesses that may be of interest to the group?
We're from the senior sets.
Senior sets? Yep. Yeah. So, yep. Okay. Okay. So we do a lot, obviously, in aged care, and it's a really, really important tool in that for compliance and for consistency as well. I'll talk a little bit about that. The other thing I want to say, there's no such thing as a stupid Combi question. Okay, I've heard them all. They're all very good questions. Like I said, they're largely misunderstood. These sessions are not about me. I do this sort of stuff all the time. It's about you guys. So put your hand up, interrupt me. One thing about our sessions is they're not set. They're informal, and we go through a process and we try and talk about any questions you have. So you leave here knowing a lot more about a Combi Steamer and what's possible in it, okay? So make sure you do that. Quentin and Brian, if you want to step in at any time, like I said, there's a few things that are relevant to Perth only or WA, particularly things like water quality and those types of things that sometimes get, important conversations in Combi Steamers, warewashing. Feel free to stick your hand up. We've got lots of local knowledge here. Moffat is the biggest Combi distributor in Australia and New Zealand. We've got 3 brands. We've got our Turbofan Combi, which is our cost-effective Combi. We've got our Blue Seal Sapien, which is our mid-level heavy duty, And behind us we have our flagship Combitherm. So across our range of 3 models, we've got 81 models of combi steamers. So very, very confusing range if you don't know what you're looking for. And across 3 brands, there's a definite sort of sector with which they're designed for. But Combitherm behind me is one of the pioneers. Who here has a Combitherm? Anyone? Yay, we like you. Good. Combitherm is one of the pioneers in the industry. So, small town in southern Bavaria in Germany, 42 years ago, this very, very clever, innovative engineering company started building combi steamers in 1976. So along the way, this very, very clever company has developed so many innovations that we take for granted today. So the first ever hand shower, the first ever touchscreen, the first ever fully automatic wash system were all innovations at Combitherm. This really beautiful little town, Eglefing, where the biggest traffic hazard is cows in the main street. We've got a 100% green factory there. It's got grass growing on the roof, its thermal qualities. It's got a biomass plant that powers the factory as well as the small town of Eglefing. They take energy and water consumption very, very seriously, and it reflects in the oven. But along the way, Combitherm has developed some patents that no one else has. And when we say it's the best combi in the market, it's because it has things no one else has. Right here, we're talking about smoking here today. Integrated into the Combitherm 4, which was released a few years ago. So 42 years of evolution, Combitherm 4 was redeveloped from the ground up. It shared 10 out of 2,500 parts with its predecessor. It was completely redesigned, and they introduced an integrated smoker into the unit here, which you can see operating behind me. That's full of food in there, you can't see it. It's only been operating for about 45 minutes. And what I want to talk today is a bit of a focus on smoking. Like I said, I was a chef for 20 years. I never really smoked anything, food-wise that is, because it's just too dirty, it's too difficult. Most chefs just avoid it. You've got to do it out in the laneway, you upset neighbours. Some people do it in, tea smoking. Try and do the best they possibly can. It's difficult, it's inconsistent. Well, we've got a tool here in Combitherm where you can do all of your cooking as well as just smoking in one chamber. And I'll explain a little bit about how it works. We're going to have some foods we're going to taste here as well. Talk about your experiences as well, and talk a bit about the application of a combi steamer so you guys can get the best out of your combi steamers. Whether you have one now or you're looking one in the future, whether you've got another brand as well, it doesn't matter. A lot of this is relevant to the application of those. But we'll talk a little bit about Combitherm and its points of difference as well. Okay? Any questions, guys? Anything? No? All good, Gibbo? Yep. Great stuff. Okay. So like I said, Combitherm is famous for the patents that it developed along the way. In 1982, they developed what's called the Advanced Closed System. Okay? Every other combi on the market, our 2 other brands, every other brand in the market is built around what's called an open system. An open system sucks in fresh air, heats it up, whether it's gas or electric, blows it over the food, vents it out the top. A very, very inefficient system. Combitherm in 82 patented the closed system, and when you shut a door on a Combitherm, it's completely sealed by a water trap, 2.5 litres here, and a 2-way dehumidification valve. The best analogy we use in the industry that you'll all understand, 2 pots of water on a stove. Put a lid on one. That's the closed system. Put gas underneath one. Gas underneath both. Which one comes to the boil the quickest? The lid. Which one requires the least amount of gas to stay on a simmer? The one with the lid. The one that has the most control over the simmer, the one with the lid. The one with the least moisture loss is the one with the lid. That's what Combitherm's advanced closed system does, okay? So, when you shut a door, you're putting a lid on it. What does it mean? Number 1, it heats up quicker. Preheat is the quickest in the industry. Number 2, the energy is captured in there, whether you're using gas or electricity. Our nearest competitor is about 12% less efficient in its energy consumption. And we talk water consumption, lid on a pot, think about evaporation. It's about 50% more efficient on water than its closest competitor. Think about that for a moment. In WA, where you're running on RO water, you understand what reverse osmosis is? I'll be honest, I'm from Melbourne. Don't need to leave you with frenzy. Water here is crap, okay? And it requires treatment. It's not scale, it's not sediment. The water's beautiful to drink. The problem is it's full of something called chlorides, okay? Chlorides cause corrosion. And so you need in this state, whether it's a dishwasher or any brand combi, you need quite often some treatment on there. And reverse osmosis is a very slow system to purify water and then store it. If your combi can use less water, means you can get much more out of your combi and your RO system. You go with a smaller RO system, you go for less storage, and that's a win-win in this state, South Australia, Northern Territory, places like that.
So in our market in Western Australia, due to water quality, every brand is the same. They have a water spec, and chlorides, like Barry says, is a big critical factor. And basically what chlorides are is dissolved salt in the water, and it's increased in areas where you use desalination or groundwater. And WA now, where 70% of our water is desaled and groundwater, and what makes it worse is they make the desaled water and put it into the groundwater. So we have very high chlorides. Most manufacturers ask for anything under 100 parts per million and below. Optus Stadium runs at 650. Over 6 times of the maximum. So it's really important that we control that. We do that with water filtration. Convatherm is the only combi on the market that uses such little water that you can connect the RO system to the whole system. So a lot of brands will split the water because their cleaning systems are inefficient and use a lot of water. So a lot of the cleaning systems use around 100 litres per cleaning cycle. We're down to, on the maximum,
26 litres.
26 litres on this unit.
Recirculate.
So it allows us to be able to do that. So there's some clear benefits in our market, especially in mining, local Perth, all those sort of things, rural areas, by choosing a Convatherm simply from that point of view, let alone all the other benefits.
Yeah.
We can't get away from it. Houses now are now putting RO systems on their house. So if anyone's just bought new houses and you're replacing, your tap washers, things like seals in your bathrooms and all that, they all deteriorate very quickly. That is all related to water quality. If anyone listened to 6PR the other day, they were talking about insurance on homes. Highest insurance claims in home is water damage now. It's up to about 43% of all insurance claims in Western Australia, all due to water quality. So things like your little hoses that you connect your fridge up for your water dispenser and things like that, they dry out, they split, you're at work 10 hours and your house is filled up with water. So it is just not unique to hospitality, it's unique to all of us, and all of us will change over time to that.
My brother has actually just gone through that. And they were out of their house for 3 weeks while they had to redo these high floor walls in the house. From a split one.
So it is, in the old days, people go, oh, it's drinking water quality, but it's not. As soon as we add heat and those sort of things, we worked it. So anything we connect to water, we've got to be critical, be worried about it. But that's what it is. It is what it is. Move on.
The other upside of that closed system is, as this is completely sealed, you can see this is thick full of smoke. Some other brands have got an integrated smoke or a smoker option. The problem is they're inherently flawed because they're open systems. If I'd been smoking here at another brand, this room would be full of smoke. Okay, it would be messy, it would be smelly, you'd smell it right through the showroom. You can see it here, it's seamless, it's clean, and the other upside is the smoke is very intense because it's all captured in there. So, who does some smoking at the moment? I know Blair said you do some smoking. How long does this smoking cycles do? This gentleman over here as well. How long, you guys?
You're smoking a brisket.
Smoke?
Yeah, what are you using, a Yoda smoker or something like that?
Cold smoke.
Cold smoke.
Fillet.
Yep.
Or hot smoke.
Yep.
Trout.
Yep.
1,000 different ways.
Yep.
You can choose lengths.
Yep. Okay, so what I find in the Convatherm, around an hour to an hour and a half is enough. I know generally people are using things like Yoda smokes 3 to 4 hours generally. In here, an hour to an hour and a half is enough. And the upside is you can do all your smoking once or twice a week in your restaurant, your production kitchen, and then every other day it's a combi steamer. Okay. The other thing that Convatherm is famous for, besides the closed system, the other thing obviously when you're cooking, things like grease and odours remain in. It's a cleaner work environment. Canopies stay cleaner longer, filters require less cleaning around the closed system. That goes along with energy and water consumption as a cost saving for you. The other thing that Convatherm has patented that no one else has is the 3-step door. Okay? So closed system we've talked about, and we'll talk a bit about that. In here, Convatherm developed this 3-step door. I'm going to have to put the exhaust on here. I don't want to make sure we get the fire.
So we haven't had the exhaust on at all.
Yep.
No smell in the air for the
A
smoke.
little bit of residual, but not really.
Not much. But if we had a smoker in here, it would be.
Some of you use combi steamers at 200 degrees, especially in combi mode. We're going to talk a bit about combi mode. There'll be a little physics lesson here today. There's an enormous amount of energy. A lot of people are very time poor. They've got untrained staff. They open doors very, very quickly. And I've seen it before. People get very, very badly burnt with combi steamers, or they fill a room full of steam. Convatherm famous for its 3-step door. Step number 1, you go to the right, you break the door seal. The energy goes where it's designed to go, up into the canopy and not into the user's face. Okay, once that energy is dissipated, and a great way to see it now is this amount of smoke coming out of the chamber. You'll see just how much has been captured in that closed system. Step number 2, we come back to the left, and I'll just let this go up the canopy rather than filling the room. And you'll start to see a whole range of different foods I've put in here. So I'm touching the surface on the smoky beer. You're going to understand how it works. I'll explain how it works. It's not an essence. It is a true smoke, and you can smoke lots of different things in here as well. I'll explain that to you. And then step number 3, Comotherm's famous disappearing door. Still going?
So you can see how much smoke's coming out of that oven chamber, the numbers coming out from the door shut.
That's only 55 minutes on the smoke. And then step number 3, down the side of the oven. No other brand has got that. And how many times I've done a demonstration where the first time I do that, they go, I don't care what else that oven does, I want that Tommy steamer. Because I worked in good kitchens, like I said, for 10 years. This is a very generous space. Just leave it there, mate. Leave it there. Very, very generous space. Generally, a metre is all you have, and with a standard combi door, this is only a 10 tray. As you go bigger and bigger, the door gets bigger. What are you doing? No kitchen has an empty space next to it, so you're blocking a sink, you're blocking a cooktop, a bench, you name it, you're blocking. If you think about Adelaide Convention Centre, has 36 40-tray Comotherms in it. They do something called plate regeneration. Anyone know what plate regeneration is? You've done it? Seen it? It's quite incredible where the dishes are actually plated up a day or 2 before through cook chill. They'll plate up a starch and a protein. They've got big trolleys that roll in about 128 plates at a time into their Comotherms, and they can do about 15,000 meals in about 15 minutes with about 6 chefs with plate regeneration. So what happens in a big 40 tray? With their previous brand, they were opening one oven, they were blocking the one next to it, so they could only load one oven at a time. With Comotherm's disappearing door, it means all the ovens can be loaded together at once. A 40 tray door is about this big. The other thing is, you've potentially got a piece of glass here at 200 degrees. Chefs are mainly time poor, tired. Very, very easy to touch an elbow on at 200 degrees. The first thing you want to do is flinch, drop whatever you're doing. So as an OHS, getting that out of the way is a really big win. It also means you can load the oven either side. And for these guys who work in catering, it can be installed in a left corner, right corner. It really doesn't matter what part of the kitchen it goes into.
That's really important, most probably for the guys from the senior SIDS and healthcare and things like that. Occ health and safety is always there. So a lot of the times when we get Comotherm in, it's simply really from an Occ health and safety point of view, from reducing that risk. That one reduced injury sometimes can cost a business a year's wages or 6 months' wages lost because of it on reduced stuff and things like that.
So what did I smoke? Well, there's so many different things you can do. And I can smell it. So, I've spoken to a few guys who do some smoking here, and when people smoke things, they traditionally think seafood, meat, but we've got a whole range of chefs doing some incredible things. When we launched this a few years ago, I thought, you know what, it's a bit of a gimmick, a bit of a niche. It's going to be a really specialist field that we sell this into. Boy, was I wrong. We sell a truckload of these. You know why? Yes, there's restaurants who do lots of different smoking, cafes, but you think about pubs and clubs, everyone does a Parma night, everyone does a steak night. This Australian market is so competitive. There's so many good places to eat in Australia, and there's not enough bums in seats. So we've got pubs and clubs now doing American barbecue rib nights. Things like that. It's a point of difference from the pub down the road, and it gets people in. And when you can spend just a little bit more on a combi steamer to get an integrated smoker, it really has opened up what people can do. I wrote menus for 10 years in my own restaurants and kitchens, and every single season I struggle to come up with new ideas. You're nodding your head because you're probably thinking the same thing. Everything just gets rehashed, rehashed, and rehashed. So if we can do things like smoke almonds, put them into a salad. We've got chefs who smoke flour and make things like fresh pasta dough. Chefs who smoke flour and make bread doughs. We've got chefs who smoke anglaise and make ice cream, smoked ice creams. A whole range of different things is possible in here. What have I done today? Well, I've done a few different things. Number one, just going to smoke some nuts and smoke some cashews here. which I will do a smoked almond coleslaw. So just a coleslaw will go with one of the meat dishes here. You'll all get to taste the food afterwards. If you don't like it, don't tell me about it, but you get to try it, okay? So the smoked almonds will go into the coleslaw. I've got some cashews here I smoked. We're going to salt up. You guys can taste that. Well, this one's a given, isn't it? I've done some beautiful salmon that I've smoked that I'm going to do on this tray as well. And one thing you're going to see me use today is lots of different trays. Okay? I'll explain why. I've smoked some sea salt. Really, really easy to do. There's a dry goods supplier in Melbourne who sells a 500 gram bag of this for $18. I'm thinking about loading this oven up on Friday, doing a farmer's market on the weekend. You can make a fortune. But to smoke some sea salt, when you're barbecuing at home or you're using a char grill or a grill at work, really nice to give you some smoked sea salt just put onto the meats. You don't have to smoke the meats, but you get that little bit of smokiness coming through as well. Really simple to do, and you get to taste that as well. I've smoked some cheeses. I've done a brie, I've done a Stilton, and I've done it was a cheddar, wasn't it? Yep. And Danish cheddar. One thing you'll notice with the smoke is all the food takes on smoke differently. Is there any, as you mentioned before, is there any right way? No, everything is different, requires different times, different types of smoke, but you'll get to taste today what takes on things differently. Okay, works with some things really well, and smoke's a polarising thing. Some people love it. You guys are probably here because you're interested and love it, but you get to taste what works and what doesn't work for you. Everyone's got personal tastes. I've done some smoked corn cobs. Now we start to talk about some different cooking. This is a overnight cooked lamb shoulder that's cooked in yogurt and honey with lemon that we cooked overnight last night, and we've just broken up and smoked it now for an hour, and then we're going to regenerate that.
So that was a cooked product, and then the smoked had.
I've got a smoked Delta T tenderloin. Anyone heard of Delta T cooking before? The butcher at the back there, Blair? No, never heard of Delta T? Okay, I'll explain Delta T shortly as well. Barbecue ribs that I sous vide for 3 hours before I smoke them. Everyone know what sous vide is?
Sous vide in there or somewhere else?
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about that. So everything was done in a combi steamer. Everything you see here, Delta T, sous vide, steaming, smoking, you name it, is all done in the one footprint. I've got a ribeye roast here as well that I slow cooked overnight. I'll explain that. And a brisket as well that I slow cooked overnight, different temperatures. You know, one thing as an operator, I owned restaurants for 7 years, and I can tell you the biggest asset and one of my biggest bills is meat. It's us, the butcher there. Once again, I'm clicking on the butcher. Meat is expensive, and a lot of people don't treat it with the respect it probably deserves value-wise. So a lot of people bring it in. I'll explain what a combi is and why it's so important to use a combi for this type of cooking. But how does the smoker work? Down at the bottom here, I've got a smoker box, a heavy gauge smoker box. When I open this up, basically open it up, you're going to see, still smoking on me. I won't open that up. Today I've used what's called Bradley Smoker pucks. Okay, I've used this because for several reasons. Number one, I can use anything I want in there to smoke. So we've got Curtis Stone. Everyone knows Curtis Stone. He does testing at a butcher in Melbourne called Norfolk Meats, who supplies Coles. I guess Curtis probably gets paid a bit of money by Coles. But he develops recipes, so he used wood chips soaked in bourbon, he used wood chips soaked in beer, and he did a lot of testing in our Compatherm at the Norfolk Meats test kitchen. We've got chefs who use coffee beans in there. Do like your coffee smoked chili beef. We've got chefs who use cassia bark, cinnamon sticks, star anise, pellets, you name it. It's not an essence, it's a true smoker box. The way it works is smoker box gets nice and hot and develops the smoke in 10 or 15 minutes. The reason we use Bradley Smoker pucks is it's integrated into the unit, okay? What does that mean? It's not just the smoker, so you'll see a 300 watt element down the bottom where it crowns the smoker box. During all other cooking, that's out the way, and you can choose, you just ignore that. But the great thing is here, and I can spend hours talking about this control panel. Everyone here has used a combi before. Will understand you've got steam, combi mode. I'm not calling it steamboat. I'll explain why. Convection mode. And here we've got a smoker. Okay? So the smoker is integrated into the cook means you can do things like sous vide at 85 degrees for 3 hours your pork ribs. Add a step, and that step will be a smoke for an hour and a half. Add a step, and then you're going to roast them off for 15 minutes. And all I need to do is put them in there. It'll do everything for me. Or the lamb shoulder that I did there, I can do something like an overnight cooking template, low temperature, well done. You won't see all the detail here, but this is everything it's going to do automatically for me. I didn't put this in. The oven told me what's going to work best for that product. But I want to smoke it, so I can go through, I can add a step, and that smoke will be an hour and 15 minutes of smoke. I look at the bottom. It's now at the bottom. I don't want that at the bottom, so I move that to the top. Right up to the top. So now it's going to smoke for an hour and 15 minutes, and it's going to go into a low temperature overnight cook. That may be an overnight lamb shoulder. Could be lots of different products you want to do. I don't want to write that every day.
At the beginning or the end of the cycle? Depends.
Depends on the product. Generally at the start, then you can smoke at the end. A lot of these are done at the end. If I'm doing a brisket or something like that, I might want to do it at the start and then slow cook on the smoke as well.
So that's at the end, Adam.
Yep.
So the shoulder. Duck, we sometimes put it halfway through. So do half the cooking process of the duck and then put the smoke halfway through. So it's really up to the imagination and what the chef wants to get out of it, pretty much.
So back to my point, so I don't have to write that every time. Give it a name, I give it an image, or I put a USB in with your own photos of your own dishes. Select what it's going to be. I never have to write that smoke program again. All you know is if the chef's sick and the apprentice has to load up your lamb shoulder smoked overnight, all he needs to do is go in, select the icon, put them in, put the smoker box in, go home. Combis are all about creating consistency in the business. The biggest issue is when you cook manually, everyone has their own interpretation of cooking. I could see it. I had a day off. I used to hate taking days off because everyone does things differently. They think they know better. That's the real downside of any business today is inconsistency. You go to a restaurant, it's fantastic. 1 week, you go back 2 weeks later, it's dreadful, you never go back. It's a competitive market, like I said. So combis create consistency. Let's do a little quiz work here, okay? Can you guys, because I talk a lot, I want to make sure you guys are awake. This will test the catering crew as well, yeah? We've got 2 of them in here. Just going to pop that out of the way.
Yeah, I've got to do that. This in it.
3 modes in a combi. So if you use a combi here, there's about half of you use combis, yeah? You don't have to use a combi to understand these questions. Ladies, are you poised? Steam mode. So a combi will make 100% steam saturation in steam mode. That doesn't mean the oven is full of water. It means the oven is holding as much water as it possibly can at that temperature and altitude. So anything that goes in there effectively thinks it's in water. Okay? But we can do things like drop down to 30 degrees, 100% steam saturation, low fan speed. So think about standing in the shower on a hot shower. Not a hot shower, no, the edge of a hot shower. What can we do at 30 degrees steam anyway? Any idea? Remember I said before these aren't cheap pieces of equipment, so there must be reasons why. Very, very good. Give that man a beer. It's only 11 o'clock.
Take it.
He's going to work towards a carton today.
Remember I said these are very expensive pieces of equipment, but they're everywhere now, so there must be a reason why. The problem is most people don't know why, and they don't use it. How many times I go to a restaurant and go, I love this oven, I use it 100 degrees steam and convection mode, and I want to slap them and go, you guys are not getting the most out of the combi. So if one thing you leave with today, besides an order for a Combitherm, is you're going to learn a little bit about what a combi is and the application wise. So, 30 degrees, we can prove bread. So we'll replace one piece of equipment that Moffat sells. That bakery guys don't know me talking about that. Let's go up between 65 and 85 degrees. 100% steam. Any idea what we can do in that? Something else?
Yeah.
Do you know? Yes, we can. I'm not going to say that's wrong, but you know, I walk into kitchens and I see these on a bench taking up generous bench space, which is never at a premium in a kitchen. Lots of hot water, and there's a little sous vide circulator in there. Okay, and the chefs jam them full of bags, and they expect that circulator to work within half a degree. When they've got a perfectly good tool in the kitchen where they can do a lot of sous vide. So a lot of chefs now are moving to sous vide cooking. Combitherm is plus or minus 1 degree accuracy. You put a bag in there, it can't discern whether it's in that combi in 100% steam or sitting in a water circulator. The difference is, look at the size of that element. This thing's got a V8 in it. So you can jam this full of bags and it will be inch perfect the whole time.
Anyone doing sous vide in their restaurant at the moment?
Yep.
Put the bags in, they're all touching together.
Yep.
So you always hear chefs going, I need to be +1, -degree and all this sort of thing, and then they get their tub and they shove it full of everything, whack that in. There's no consistency in that water because you're getting contact between the bags. So you want separation. Combi mode, everything's separated.
There's even something called a sous vide probe. That's a needle probe. Not for everyone, but you can understand, in the combi steamer, comes built in, with a 4-point probe for cooking. Okay, that takes an accurate reading across 4 different points. So that far of your chicken breast takes an accurate reading. Okay, this is very, very important, especially in aged care where compliance and critical temperatures need to reach 75. This takes the guesswork out, but we can override this internal pour probe for sous vide cooking. An example may be you want to sous vide a whole side of salmon. Rather than going guesswork on how long you get a sous vide for, you can select the temperature you want to sous vide at. And rather than setting a time, you can select an end temperature, say 48. Pierce that through the bag without losing vacuum against the protein. Plug it into here, goes into the chamber and controls the internal temperature of the sous vide while you're doing a sous vide in the bag. Not for everyone, we sell a few of these a year, but every single combi steam with Combitherm can do sous vide cooking.
Other common question is, do we have to always sous vide in a bag?
No? That's something called Delta T. Now, 90 degrees, any idea? 90 degrees? Steam? Who's been to Chinese restaurants? Everyone's been to Chinese restaurants. Don't lie. We all love Chinese restaurants. Who, you know, you've seen a steamed fish come from Chinese restaurants? Yep. Everyone's had
steamed
them.
fish.
Whole steamed fish. How do they come out? I'll tell you how they come out. They come out covered in spring onions, coriander, everything. You know why? Because the protein has pulled apart. The problem with steaming over a pot, any idea what the steam temperature in above a pot is, traditional steamer?
100.
It's about 98.2, believe it or not. By the time it's lifted up, I think the average temperature is 98.2. And the problem is things like fish, that is too high a temperature to steam protein. And you notice, you're nodding your head, the proteins cook too quickly and they start to pull apart. So that whole flounder or whatever you order from the Chinese restaurant, you'll see the proteins pulling apart, the eyes have popped out, it's ugly, they have to cover it. You steam fish at 90 degrees, 88, 90, 92, you end up with perfect integrity of that fish, okay? Exactly the same as how you put it in, but steamed. 100 degrees, what's that? A lot of boiling water, isn't it? You know, as a chef for 20 years, I used to go over a sink, fill up a pot of water. You probably all do something you do the same. Walk over to your cooktop, wait 15 minutes for that to boil. Throw your broccoli in it, 15 minutes later, it tumbles on itself, the little flowerets break off. You spider it in some ice water, it breaks up again. What's left in that pot 20 minutes later? Nutrients. Thank you. Beautiful green water, all your nutrients, and then half an hour later you dangerously walk back over the sink, put all your nutrients down the drain. It's ridiculous and antiquated. A combi will heat up, Combitherm will heat up a degree a second. 100 degrees, 100 seconds. Okay? You put all your broccoli in there, 10 trays, it does not move. The integrity of the product remains the same, and you'll notice the water around there, there's no green. All the nutrient retention, colour retention is in there. If you're in aged care, hospital, it is paramount that you deliver all those nutrients to the end user. So, I mean, that old pot way is antiquated. Unfortunately, we still see it, but one reason is they don't have a combi steamer. So,
Or they do, and they don't use it.
130 degrees, steam. Number one, there's a reason why it stops at 130, I'm going to explain shortly. What can we do at 130 degrees steam? Any idea? We can start accelerating things. Frozen vegetables, jacketed potatoes, turnips, those types of things, we can start to speed it up. Because chefs and production managers and so forth are generally time poor. Anything you can speed up. Any idea why steam stops at 130?
Anyone understand?
Not very pressure or... I'll explain that shortly. So I'm going to do a little bit of steaming now because I want to heat some things up. Do a little bit of steaming quickly. No. I'm going to go into something called press and go in the Combi Therm. So, as I said, creating consistency is what Combi steamers do well. Combi Therm developed this easy touch screen. It's called Easy and it's touch. It's designed around a chef. Okay? It doesn't tell you how you want to roast a chicken and those types of things. These are recipes around you. It comes with about 60 programs built in here, and you can build it up to 400 programs of your own. But 400 programs in a single index, you call it roast pork, you call it pork roast, you're forever going through 400 programs saying what the hell did they call it. So there's a series of ways of developing and managing your profiles in Combi Therm. You save everything into this folder, you can move into your favourites, or you can create something called categories. You may be doing Meals on Wheels external catering, you may be doing food production, you may be doing lots of different things. You have multiple brigades in your kitchen, you have mise en place, you have pastry section, they all want to use a Combi at the same time. We can select categories in here. Today I've called it catering. Alright. And let me just preheat this a little bit. I'm going to bring it up to temperature. And one thing you'll notice, Easy Touch will always tell the operator what to do. Do you know the biggest complaint we ever have with inconsistency in poor cooking is generally related to chefs being impatient and not preheating or cooling down an oven. You think about these sitting at room temperature and then you go load it full of product and you want to bake at 180. The first 10 minutes of any oven with all that thermal mass is forever trying to come up to temperature. They create inconsistencies. Easy Touch will always tell the operator what to do, okay? It's pretty simple. The chef's on there, he'll tell you preheat, open door, close door, put food in, and press and go will also allow you to put products onto trays itself. You know, when I see Combi steamers, 10 trays are popular in Australia. How many times they go into kitchens and it's got 2 or 3 trays in there, then they take them out, then they put another 3 or 4 trays in, take them out. It's a waste of energy and time. What Press and Go will do for the operator is tell them what they can cook together and encourage them to do that. So the oven is being used to the maximum at the same time. I'll explain that now. So I've created these categories. Right now I'm just going to steam a little bit of braised silver meat I've done. Dijon braised silver meat for under the beef. And some pak choy I'm just going to steam up here. All I need to do is select one of my programs, pak choy, and select what tray of the oven I'd like to put that on. Okay?
I don't know which tray.
I'll put on tray number 3. Okay.
Loaded in the oven.
Yep.
So on the inside the oven, when Perry opens it up, you'll see that each shelf actually has a laser etched number on it. So if you select the shelf number 3, in the timer, it's on number 3 in the oven as well, so you don't have to count and work out which shelf it is.
You know all of those programs that are on there, they've now disappeared because it knows that I'm steaming something. So it's filtered out everything that I can't do, and it's saying, well, you're in this temperature, in this mode, these are the other things in my profiles that I can do. What do I want to do? I'm just doing my silver beet now, select my silver beet. Where do I want to put that? And away we go. So while that's going, it's also probably what else I want to do. If I load that fully, it will say all shelves are occupied, it's happy. But it's basically compensating each tray as I add more load, mixed load, how long the door is open, it'll compensate the timers based on that load. Whilst we're steaming, let's talk a little bit about trays and accessories. So those people who cook, do anyone recognise any of the trays and accessories on here? Or just the stainless ones? Same? Yeah.
How many people cook?
Hang on. We know these.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what kills me is people spend $5, $10, $20, $30,000 on a combi steamer, then all they do is go out and buy stainless steel trays for it, and they're generally disappointed. Okay, stainless steel works for a lot of things. Steaming, obviously, it's a given. Fantastic for steaming. A little bit of general cooking, but you know what? Stainless doesn't hold heat. Doesn't heat up, doesn't hold heat. Who's done a roast on these and you end up with a nice roast and then underneath it's milky and soggy? Because these trays can't hold heat. So what you're going to see is things like aluminium, Teflon coated aluminium grill rack. Okay, aluminium heats up really, really quickly and holds heat. So I can put a steak on that. 7 minutes later in the oven, I've got grill marks on it. Okay. You think about if you're a pub or a club, you've got a function room with 100 steaks on it. Try doing that in front of a char grill. I've seen it before. Every steak's different. Some's burnt, some's raw. I can put 100 steaks on these, put a core probe into one of them, select medium. Whilst they're resting, imagine doing 100 chips in your fryer. You've got a 2-basket fryer at work. 2 baskets down, up, wait 5 minutes for the oil to come back up again, go again. It's going to take you half an hour to do 100 serves of chips. I can use things like fryer baskets, and whilst the steaks are resting, in 8 minutes I've done 100 serves of chips. Okay? These are also fantastic for smoking. Aged care. Every aged care in Australia does fish and chips on a Friday, I've noticed. And quite often I'll go there and they put the crumb fish on this, and they bake it, and they're going to flip it halfway, or they serve a crunchy crumb one side and a soggy crumb on the other side. Things like the Teflon coated aluminium, I mentioned aluminium, flat aluminium here, heats up immediately, put the fish on that, crunchy both sides at the same amount of time. Okay? Also pastries, things like the fish on there, it'll heat up immediately, colour, and is non-stick as well. The other thing is, I haven't got here, but I've got the enamel pans. Enamel you'll see in ovens like this that we manufacture. Enamel is not a cheap finish, it's actually quite a expensive product for us to manufacture, but the reason we do is enamel holds heat really, really well. So, if you're doing overnight roasts and veggies, enamel trays are really, really fantastic. They will heat up, they'll colour both sides, you won't need to flip the veggies. So if you take one thing away today, you don't buy an oven, or you want to get more performance out of your combi oven, pick the right trays. Okay? Yes, buy some stainless, they're good for people, but they don't work great for holding heat. All of these types of accessories, every time we do a demonstration, we show that, people go and buy them because they will absolutely change the product coming out of your oven. So we're just doing some steaming here at the moment. 100% steam, I talked about stopping at 130 degrees. Okay? And the reason was 130 degrees, that steam turns into a dry gas. Okay? And that's what combi mode is. So I'm going to give you a little physics lesson here. By the time you walk out, if you listen to 5 minutes of my physics lesson, you will know more than 95% of chefs in the industry. Because most chefs don't understand it. They will call it steam bake. I don't like calling it steam bake, you're not steaming anything. And most of the cooking we're going to do here, so you can taste some food shortly, will all be done in combi mode. There's a reason why, and I'll explain that. But above 130 degrees, you think about your kettle at home, when it's boiling, you see a lot of steam coming out. If you look just above the spout, there's a little clear patch there. About 120, 130 is completely clear. That's the dry gas. And as you see, cooling down is the steam you actually see. So I'll explain that shortly here. So half the room had combi steamers. Who cooks in combi mode in their combi steamer? Steam both. You do? Yep. What sort of products?
Just whatever.
Yep. Good. You know, we say 70% of general food service cooking should be done in combination mode. I'll explain that shortly once this food comes out. Anything all right, Brian, just while I'm doing this? No? Let's talk a little bit about some of the techniques I've done here for the butcher at the back there and anyone doing meat products. We talked about sous vide, and Brian said you don't have to do everything sous vide. This was cooked by a method called Delta T. There's lots of different things you can do in the Combitherm. This one here was a low temperature overnight cook. I'll explain that. This was a low temperature overnight cook. This was a Delta T cook. So what's a Delta T? You'd understand that a sous vide is a very, very gentle way to cooking a product, yeah? Generally at a lower temperature.
So units alarming, telling us what shelf. Now the oven's automatically compensating for the rest of the stuff that's in the oven, so the timers will stop, basically, when it gets back to temperature, so it compensates that, so it goes into that. So no matter what product you put in, it will come out the same every time.
Thanks, John.
That's all right.
So Delta T, what I've done here, classic example is rare roast beef carpaccio, yeah? We've all had it in restaurants. You end up with this nice tenderloin, rare in the middle. The outside is always brown where they have to apply heat to it and cook it and roast it.
Okay.
And the downside is you get about 30% of moisture loss out the outside of that tenderloin. What happens in Delta cooking? What happens in Delta T cooking, if I select in here Delta T rare, the rare temperature that I cooked this tenderloin at was 48 degrees, yeah, which is the end temperature. You'll notice the oven temperature has been replaced with what's called a delta temperature. So what's that? It's not the actual temperature, it's set at 40 degrees. It's the temperature the oven will be above what it's reading on the core temperature probe. So I go and get my tenderloins. If I'm a butcher like Blair, go get my tenderloins out. I put them in the combi oven. I put the core temperature probe in. It'll read what, 4 degrees from the core room? The oven will be 40 degrees above what it's reading on that core probe. So it'll be 44 degrees. 4 degrees, 44. And what happens is it brings the temperature up together very, very slowly. So when it finally reaches 48 degrees, the oven will be 88 degrees. So, number one, you're applying very gentle heat, but you're bringing it to the same endpoint. So when you do your rare roast beef carpaccio, it's rare all the way around, there's no moisture loss. The same can be said in butchery when you're doing things like small goods, hams, those types of things where you really need to gently bring them up to temperature. And it's a way you don't have to sous vide everything to keep the moisture in. And you've seen a beautiful, rare piece of meat here. The moisture is still in, there's no ring around the outside, there's no moisture loss. You know, there's a whole goods supplier in Melbourne, wholesale meats. He sells rare roast beef by the tonne a week. He went to Delta T cooking a few years ago in his copper therapy, saved 30% in yield loss. Previously he was roasting it, rare, 30% of the moisture was going out the flue into the canopy. By going to Delta T cooking, that moisture was being retained. He sells by the kilo. He paid for his oven in about 9 months, selling by the tonne a week. So in the right scenario, it makes a difference. You'll taste this, it's quite incredible. The Delta T cooking. I'll come back to the low temperature cooking shortly. I'm going to do my little physics lesson and I will go into combi cook here. So, I want to explain something to you. Think about a hot room, think about a cold room, put a door in between. You open up that door, what wants to happen? It wants to equalise, doesn't it? Yeah, hot into the cold, cold into the hot, yeah? You go and get your butcher or your whole food supplier to come in, supply your meat, or you go to the butcher, you go home, you put it into your dry oven. Nice moist roast, dry oven. Exactly the same thing wants to happen. It wants to equalise, doesn't it? The dry air wants to get into the moisture wants to evaporate into the dry air. It's the worst thing you can possibly do. Because it wants to equalise the whole time. Understand that? Also, a bit of basic physics. Water will transfer 4 times the amount of energy the dry air will. You think about your oven at home at 200 degrees, you open it up, 200 degrees, put your hand in, 15 seconds later it's starting to get hot. You think about your kettle at 100 degrees boiling, there's no way you're putting your hand over that boiling kettle, you'll burn yourself. That's because water will transfer energy much more efficiently than dry air. But remember, above 130 degrees, that moisture is a dry gas. Okay? This is what we're getting into here, is combi cooking, combi steam. So you've got to think about combi mode as a dry cooking mode. I'm going to slot in my rack, please, Quentin. While this is preheating up. Get that nice and hot. And you'll see where I'm going on this shortly. Let's get a bit of temperature in here. So you think about combi mode as a dry mode. Now what I'm going to do is put this right there in water. Thanks. Did you get that?
Yep.
Is that me?
That was me.
I thought I was getting senile. I nearly
You are saying no.
What I'm going to do is put this water jug in here. It's half filled with cold water. Okay. The top half is going to come up to the oven temperature very, very quickly, yeah, because there's no water behind it. That's going to be the outside of your food product. It's what it's going to be feeling. The bottom half of this jug, bear with me here, this will make sense shortly, right? You've got to concentrate. The bottom half's full of cold water, so it's going to take a long time to come up to oven temperature. It's going to be the inside of your food product. Now, for the chefs in the room, who knows the internal core temperature of a well done cut of roast meat? Anyone? 75? Bang on, that's what I would have said. 75 degrees, well below that condensation point, okay? Well below where that dry gas becomes, that gas becomes a dry gas. That's going to be the bottom half of the jug. It'll make sense in a moment when you visualise it. If you can't see it, I'll explain what's happening in the combi oven. So right now we're in combi mode, okay? So let's run for a moment, put its gas in there. So what you're going to see when you look at this combi oven at 180 degrees, it's going to look completely dry because it is. Right? Can you see how much moisture is coming out see at the back there, there's an overpressure drain box. Can you see how much humidity is coming out of that? It's pouring out. So when I crack this door, that oven is completely dry.
Can't see any moisture inside.
Right, so it's good, you're younger than me. That looks dry, doesn't it?
Yep. Completely.
Right. And then when I crack this door, I'm introducing cold air. See that steam? How much steam's in there? I'm going to go put my roast in. I don't know what your eyesight's like. I should have put that tray out a bit further. I'll put that on front. Do you know when I do a demonstration, I'll quite often get Nana's apple tarts from the supermarket, from Coles. You've all seen them, the little Nana's apple tarts. It says preheat oven to 180 degrees, 185 degrees. 185 is 185. Bake for 30 to 35 minutes. That's how long they take. I do it in the combi steamer, in Combitherm, in combi mode. Same temperature. Just because it's commercial oven makes no difference. The temperature's the same. You know, it goes from 30 to 35 minutes. How long? Any idea? It goes to 9 minutes. Not because it's a commercial oven, but because that transfer energy efficiency of that moisture as a gas can transfer that heat much, much more efficiently. The outside is the top half of that jug. It thinks it's beautiful and hot and dry in there, just a really intense dry. The inside thinks it's the bottom half of this jug. Can anyone see that? What's your eyesight like? Can anyone see that? Can you see a distinct line forming? The bottom half is pouring moisture off it. That's the inside of your roast saying, hey, there's so much moisture in here, I don't want to equalise. Why would I want to equalise when there's so much moisture in here just like me? So it never wants to dry out. The top half of the jug thinks, God, it's bloody hot in here and dry. I'm going to colour and brown, or if I'm the apple tart, I'm going to crumble and brown. And so when I do that apple tart in 9 minutes, I get the pastry and I crumble it dry. That's the top half of the jug. Crack it open and the steam comes out. That is the genius, and where we said 70% of general food service cooking should be done in combi mode because of this, the incredible flexibility. You know, what's everyone trying to achieve? It's pretty simple. Whether you're in aged care, a high-end restaurant or a hotel, everyone wants to cook quicker with better quality. Cook quicker, better quality. Go from 30 to 35 minutes to 9 minutes with a better product. Why wouldn't you? You'd be stupid not to. And you know, when we get onto dry convection mode in a combi, we only talk about grilling, crisping, frying, drying, dehydrating, all the things you want to get moisture out. How many people roast their meats in dry convection mode? In Combitherm, there's a way to do that. I'll explain that. But this is where it should be done. And it's pure reason. You cook quicker, better quality. Does that make sense to you? When you visualise that?
So, just to kind of add slightly to that while Perry's doing that, Combitherm automatically detects how much humidity it needs to produce in the oven. So if anyone's used any other brand, including our Blue Seal and our Turbofan, it will ask you on combination mode to set a humidity. Anyone seen that in their combi mode before?
Yep.
Okay, Combitherm will automatically detect. It's no rocket science, it's exactly that physics. So Combitherm have gone, Why do we need to set the humidity inside the oven chamber? The food will dictate how much moisture I need to absorb.
The reason they can do that is a closed system, so it's impervious to outside humidities and changes all the time, completely sealed, so it's fully automatic composite, and you can see that there. If you set that at 65% or 75%, it makes no difference. It's all related to what the food product is attracting. End of physics lesson.
Yeah.
You all know more than most chefs, okay? That's why combis are so important for a lot of cooking. See how much moisture's in there? So now we're going to do a little bit of cooking. And I'll get back to convection mode at the end. I'll go back into my press and go into K-Link, and let's load some foods up here. So, Quentin, do you want to give me a hand?
Yep, absolutely.
Sorry. This is my brisket. Alright, we've got some brisket here. We're going to put this in here. Now, this one here I'm going to slice up myself. Slot the brisket in. Go down the bottom. Go up the top actually. Did you allocate? No. Right, put it in. So brisket is number 2. Okay. Let's put in the ribs underneath that. Number 3. Number 4. Go up one. Yep. Okay. Let's put the fill it in.
On this tray?
Yep. That one. And that's that. Pork. Let's put it all in. And done. I'll move that down shortly. Shut the door. Yep. So, yell it out to me. What do we miss there?
Okay, so we have fillet on number 5.
There was a fillet. Yep.
7 on 6.
7 on 6.
Corn on 7.
1 on 7.
That's it. Yep, and 9 for the lamb.
Oh.
So,
Right, so I've loaded the oven, and what Press and Go will do, will compensate all the time as based on the load. It'll also alert me to every single tray in there. It also filtered out everything I can't do. I can't do silver beet, I can't do all of those things in here. So it's done the thinking for me. It also understands it's not full yet, so it's giving me options to add other things. Here we go. Quentin, you can do that in front of the punters. Slice that up, we're going to use the grill rack in there as well.
So just remind everyone what you did with that.
Right. So see that one there? That's a ribeye roast that sat in the Combitherm all night. It went through, all I did was use one of the templates in Combitherm. I selected Combi mode for the reasons that I just talked about. You understand that has cooked for about 14 hours?
Yep.
See the moisture in there? It never had the opportunity to equalise and dry out.
So anyone doing tomahawk steaks, those
Yep.
sort of things, if you do use this process, you get a lot better product at the end.
Or if you're a pub or a restaurant trying to cook that from raw, seal it, cook it, rest it. How long do the people have to wait for something like that? 45 minutes or an hour, yeah, at least. You can do a lot of the preparation. I've taken that to 48 degrees internal temp, so it's rare now. All I need to do is seal that up and reheat, and I can serve because it's not raw in the middle. So what I've done there is use one of the templates. It was a 4-step program that it automatically chose for me. All I need to do was put the product in the core probe in. First was 10 minutes, 130 degrees, seals the meat and kills any bacteria. In a closed system, bacteria cannot get in and out. So once you kill a bacteria, it's safe. In aged care, we see long, slow, overnight cooking being done. You obviously have to reach your critical temperatures at 75, but if you're doing things like shoals and so forth, they do that. It then dropped down a temperature to 48 in the internal, and beautiful. That's okay. At an oven temperature of only 55, just a really nice gentle, and then it just held at about 46 degrees till I came in the next day and took it out. A great way to do production. And you know, a combi works exceptionally well when you're not there. Chefs work like idiots. Double shift, work really, really hard, and then they go home and nothing happens in the kitchen. And then they come in and work like crazy again. Combi ovens work really, really well when you're not there. And a lot of smart chefs in kitchens now will do a lot of their food production overnight. Sous vide cooking overnight, low temperature cooking overnight. They're safe, they use very little energy. And Combitherm records 2 years worth of food safety data. Meaning if anyone gets sick in aged care and council knocks on your door 3 months later and says, hey, Joe Bloggs is here, they had your rare roast beef 3 months ago. You go to the date, the time, the program, it shows everything from pasteurisation levels, how many times the door was open, there's always compliance. Thanks. I'll swap them in now.
How would you reheat that? You're about to see.
I'm just going to throw it on the grill rack in there in combi mode.
That was just your lunch, mate.
So
You
you
see
think,
all that humidity? Here you go. You see colouring.
Bit of sizzle.
On the grill rack. And I'll let that go.
so that can be heated up, reheated on time, or by cool probe if you want it as well. So if you want to heat it up to a temperature of 65 or something to bring it back, you can do it by cool probe. So if you've got it up full, then you guarantee that the inside.
Good on you. Do you want to do that?
Absolutely.
Do the coleslaw as well.
So in kitchens, a lot of people, sous vide's a great format of cooking, and a lot of chefs are using it to make service easier. Like Perry said, we're all trying to make service a little bit easier, sealing and putting out. Things like Delta T add to that as well. So you imagine you're doing something, you've done something like that, like a rib, it could be a whole strip loin, it could be tenderloin, it could be anything, and then you portion it, seal it on the char grill, send it out. Exactly the same format, but a different form of protein. Yes. So downside of sous vide, obviously it doesn't break down meat tendon, that sort of thing, fat, so things like ragu beef, things like that, you really struggle to do that in sous vide because you can't break down that fat, where Delta T would be a better option. So that's the opening up.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian.
Alright.
Alright, what have we got there? So it's putting in order what's going to come out here, and we're going to start putting some food up. We're coming into lunchtime. Everyone hungry?
He's trying to think about it.
Out of
Yeah.
hungry. Anyone here who doesn't like smoked food? You wouldn't be here, would you? It's funny, smoke is a really polarising thing. Some people love it, some people don't.
But then with something like that, it lets you choose the intensity of the smoke,
Correct.
as opposed to everything being all 100. You get the limits.
What would you use today for sweet?
Sorry?
What would?
What wood? Which wood was that we
This
used?
is a Shio blend, I believe.
Yep. So in the Bradley stove, you get mesquite, hickory, maple, apple, all of those
Really up
types
to
of
you. You could soak wood in beer, do paprika, coconut husk, whatever you want, really. Yeah, it's really up to you how far you want to go with it.
Go get some hickory chips from Bunnings if you want to do it. So it's really up to what you use. I use the biscuits just because they fit there nicely. They're good for a demo.
And when the fan comes on, they don't blow around. I'm just going to pop that over there.
Yep. Hold on.
Yep. So the brisket was done very similar to the beef fillet, but it was in a different combi because we used a different temperature last night. With brisket, who does brisket here? You do brisket? Yep. How are you doing it?
I just slow it.
In stock?
Traditional style,
Yeah, in the stock. Yeah,
And then
yeah,
use the juice as the sauce.
yeah, which works really, really well. We've done this completely dry in here, but we did it in combination mode overnight. And because we're doing a low temperature, it's a bit like sitting in stock, so it doesn't have that opportunity to equalise. But one thing I find with doing briskets, you need to reach a temperature of 79 in the core, or the proteins and fats don't really break down. And when you set a well done in here, it's about 75, it's not quite enough, so I just bump it up, create a brisket program, and you get a much more tender brisket. Don't have to do it in the stock, it's simple to do. Bit of a rub on it, and you do that up now, you can taste that. Alright, so salmon coming out.
You want your brisket sliced up here, Ferry?
Yes, please. Our salmon. What else is coming out? Our Delta fillet we're going to carve up.
Another thing with the stainless steel trays, see how the stainless steel tray buckles under the heat? Okay, now these are a relatively good quality stainless steel tray as well. They're not the best quality, but they're in between, so your cheap trays, they lock up in the thing, they create burns. The aluminium trays, nothing's still in the same integrity as it went in the oven.
I actually remember kitchen times of them buckling in the oven and not being able to get them in.
Yeah, that happens.
You do need to be very careful of that. We had a big site contract caterer over here where someone got burnt quite badly.
Yep.
And the reason was they had a liquid in a deep gastronorm tray and literally twisted and buckled, and as they were trying to pull it out, getting jammed using cheap trays, they burnt themselves. So it really is false economy. Spend a little bit more on trays. That's one thing you take today.
So that was an interesting one actually. Both you and I were both involved in that, weren't we? So we're going to ban combi ovens in the mine sites because of it, from an health and safety issue. It came down to the quality of the tray. So we get to that stage where they got to pull it out because it was a burn issue. But it just was quality of the tray. But someone in health and safety was going, the ovens are too dangerous. So it's relatively important, you know, at any level that you're using the right things.
Imagine cooking without them.
Hey? Well, you know, you can't legislate stupidity, can you, Gertz? But
That's what we say about warranty. You can't warrant against it.
no, that's right.
We see everything.
But yeah, it was an interesting concept when we were sitting in on the meeting a few years ago about that.
Yeah. Any questions so far, guys? Well, we've got the last couple of minutes here. Anyone learn anything about a combi, Steamer? Some application-wise? Yeah? Great. How are we going, Quentin?
Yeah, just get the last few bits of the bowl.
Righto.
Like if you had steam and then smoke to finish.
Yep.
Would you need to put the puck in after?
You wouldn't
Can
have
handle the steam.
Absolutely, it can. It will take a little bit. It will take a little bit longer to produce the steam because you'll have a bit of moisture in the puck, but the pucks don't absorb a huge amount of moisture. It's not like you're dunking it in a bucket of water.
You're soaking them anyway, right?
Yeah.
You can soak them.
Yeah.
These I've run dry. You can soak these to get more smoke and more longevity out of it. What I find, you can smoke up to 4 hours in the Compatherm. These pucks dry will last maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours, they're all gone. You soak them overnight, you're going to get more time out of it. Just like soaking wood chips as well, you get a thicker smoke, more longevity out of it as well. You raised a good point as well, you talked about cold smoking.
Yeah.
So, who else did smoking in here? You did it, Blair, you talked about that. Anyone else? You understand cold and hot smoke? I can't say it's traditional cold smoke, I'm not going to lie. The reason is, to create smoke, you've got a 300 watt element at the bottom to create a box that's very hot to make smoke. In a closed system, it's going to generate a small amount of heat. What I find though, you'll see when this salmon came out, after an hour, it had a very, very light layer of protein coagulation around it. After an hour, I find it's up around 28, 30 degrees, maybe 32 degrees in the oven chamber. So does the traditional cold smoker, no. What it does though is gives a restaurant or a function centre or a cafe the opportunity to smoke. But what I found is a lot of chefs will work around a little bit of temperature in there by, let's say for example you're doing whole size of salmon, they will get a tray, put water in it, freeze it overnight, lay the fish out on some ice, and then smoke in there and keep the fish temperature down, keep the oven temperature down as well. The other thing is, being a closed system, after about 15 minutes, it's thick full of smoke. You can then turn that element off after 25 minutes, just let it sit on a pool of smoke. It's probably sit around 18, 20, 22 degrees. Is it cold? No, but it's cool enough that you don't get the protein coagulation.
I've done quite a bit of cold smoking, and if you set the smoke to about 25 minutes and then turn it off and leave it on, you get fairly good results without using ice. So it's manipulative. Yeah.
Is this a new feature or is this always been the same?
No, so Gert, your oven is the old 3 series, your little mini one that you've got. This is the 4 Series. How long's 4 Series been out for?
About 4
4
years
years.
now.
So your oven would be, and you order,
We'll have a test, we'll happily take an order today for you. We'll do a deal on this one here as well if you
You
like.
can't fit it in here. But you can replicate in your because it's still a closed system. So you can replicate this smoking within your oven. It would just that you'd have to produce the smoke in a Gastron tray like that, then put and then whack it in the oven. So you can do that because you've got the closed system. So you can do that. Okay, so you could replicate it. You can also buy smokers that connect to a single phase power point, and what you do is you run the cable inside the oven to an external and switch the switch on and off manually. So it's actually a separate smoker, so it's a box with a power cable to it, and you can put that inside the oven chamber and have it as a switch on. So basically the cable will go through the door sill. So it has a thin cable rather than a round 10 amp cable like this. The cable is a flathead style cable, so there is some aftermarket options like that as well. And because of the closed system, you can get the same results as
So I like the first one that you said.
yeah, you can do it that way.
You don't need to do too much, but
Yeah, it would add for you, especially your product, some of your little things, smoking some fruit and all that sort of stuff. You could do that sort of stuff, definitely, yeah.
I don't want the food to go cold, so I'm going to get through the next section, which is convection cooking. We all understand convection cooking, we've all got them at home, but let's talk about some other things you can do in the Convethern. We all understand dry heat, yeah? But just like before, we can go down to dry heat around 30 degrees as well. We can do infinite time, we can do low fan speed, and Convethern has a feature called crisp and tasty. Remember I said you're putting a lid on a pot with Convethern? You would never put a steak in a frying pan and just put a lid on it, because it's just going to stew, isn't it? So you can take the lid off, and in Convethern you can actually actively suck moisture out of the chamber. You might want to do a crackling on a fork, or you want to do macaroons, or at 30 degrees low fan speed, maximum moisture removal, what can we do? Perfect. Very, very good. Something else that we sell. So a lot of people don't like me talking about. We replaced the bread crew, we replaced the sous vide machine, we replaced the steamer basket, we've replaced the dehydrator. Okay, so a lot of chefs now will dehydrate in Convethern overnight, very gently and safely using very little energy. High-end chefs like Donovan Cook, we just put double stacks into Attica in Melbourne, I think he went from number 20 to number 86 in the world, but he does dehydration in his Convethern.
We just sold one to Manjima, telling you yesterday, the Bravo apples. The Bravo apples that are being bred in Manjima, the ones that don't discolour when they cut.
Yep, they're doing apple chips.
Apple chips. They're seconds apples. They're slicing them and then dehydrating them through their Convethern.
Yep.
So we did a bit of product evaluation with them, and they bought a Convethern for doing that.
You might know people in the restaurants, Dan Hunter as well, Bray, number 100, he was 103 in the world last year using dehydrating, a lot of dehydrating Convethern back in Melbourne. So you can dehydrate. Obviously when you're doing things like baking, is convection mode, but in Convethern, for those that bake in-house, which is becoming more and more popular, everything from roadhouses through to supermarkets through to restaurants are now baking in-house. Who here bakes in-house? Yeah, you bake in-house? Yep. Everyone understand a baker will use a dry static deck oven or rack oven, and at the start they will inject moisture in because it's very good for the crust. Good longevity, allows the crust to expand without cracking. And just like a baker will, we've got a feature in Convethern called Bake Pro. Even though in dry convection mode, it actually injects moisture at the start and then stops the fan for a period of time to allow that moisture to settle on your products and then kicks off. It was designed for baking, but also designed for a lot of sites now who use pre-through frozen products. There's no need to thaw your products anymore with Bake Pro. You go straight from the freezer, straight into the oven, and the Bake Pro will handle that.
So Moffat overall, Perry looks after combis, he just thinks about combis, but I look at the whole Moffat portfolio. We did some testing in a Rotel oven, which is the most commonly used bakery oven in the market. You see it in every Baker's Delight, Brumbies and Woolworths stores. We did testing in our turbofan and in the combi oven. The results out of the Convethern using Bake Pro on ready-to-bake product was unbelievable. We did croissants, fully loaded. They rose a lot more. We got a better bake all the way through. The lamination through it by using Bake Pro was really, really good. It does have a real benefit for baking within your facility as well. It was it was very market difference, so it was good.
So baking 150 to 200. And once we get above 200, we can do things like very, very dry, hot air, crisp and tasty. We can do things like air frying, crisping, grilling, things like salt, pepper, squid. Like I said before, chips. I can do 10 trays of chips in here in 8 minutes, like they've just come out of a fryer. Is the Combitherm or the Combi the right tool for everything? It can do just about everything. Is it always the right tool? No. If you've got to do chips in a restaurant, yes, use a fryer. If you're going to do chips for 100 people, that's a better tool. So it's about picking your fights. It'll do it though. And right now, I'm just going to do a bit of an interpretation of some chips. I've just done some nice little chats that I steamed. I just crushed them, a bit of smoked sea salt, and some olive oil, crisp and tasty. 8 minutes, you're going to get a really nice, fluffy, crunchy little chats to go with the lunch. So let's just talk a little bit about what we've done here. Like I said, no other implement was used in the making of this film. Everything was done in the combi oven. We sous vide the ribs. We low temperature cooked the ribs overnight, the rib roast overnight. We low temperature overnight cooked the braised lamb shoulder and yogurt and honey. We steamed the chats, we steamed the corn cobs and then smoked them for 10 minutes. The brisket was done at a different temperature. The salmon was a low temperature. No, we didn't even do that. We just smoked it and then 6 minutes in combi steam. And you'll see the inside of that is really juicy and moist. Remember the jug? Never had the opportunity to dry out. We smoked the cashews, we smoked the cheese. I mean, you're going to go out smelling like an ashtray, but hopefully you enjoy the food. And I'm just a bit mindful of the fact that it's going to start cooling down. If you guys hungry, come up. You're welcome to go sit back down again and eat the food while we finish off. Just put them up the front, Ryan.
Don't be shy, guys.
Come on, someone's going to start. Just be mindful this rack's still going to be pretty hot.
Okay, so just some examples of meals you can do in any outlet. You get American style ribs with the smoked corn, smoked almonds with a slaw. Okay, you got your brisket, otherwise it's heading to your